Now, here's an interesting story. Now, granted, with Portuguese, Spanish, Latin, Greek, it's easy to figure out what's being said here. And English. It's easy to figure out what's being said here. And you can skip the intensive Winka and Malay because the words are going to appear infrequently. And as long as you know something about the postfixes, now there's going to be postfixes, but there's not going to be so many prefixes. So it's a postfixed language. And you know that the pronouns can go niya, siya, kia. Okay, so you know, so those are the things that you just got to know by rote. Okay, so update, po, it, issa, cuenta, see Spanish, ang isa ang bebe, a woman, ina mula sa, she lives in Oslam Cebu. Ang babae na ito ang lang ang baleta. See, in the news of what's going on with her. So you just need to know that. Maarong mang 13. So that's I don't know exactly, but that's like maybe the 13th of May. Mayeron, I'd assume from Spanish. Ikakala eng sang kalo isang caso. See, once again, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, caso un bebe. And see, itwas ing makalas in isa ing ara karon and not karon and si usa un caso in me un na arresto, see Spanish, and I only have to worry about the tense. And na inabawan isa laang sing bebe na alam imbuto un historia. Okay, once again, Spanish. Okay, now here's the thing. Now I've been doing this for a while, so what I want to know is watch. I got a specific question, and this is why AI in all of its forms, whichever one you prefer, or all the ones you use, is better than a human being teaching you this. Because in this language, it's impossible to it was prior to 2 years ago. It was impossible to understand the language without flying directly to the Philippines. And then once you got there and you spoke to a person who, even though they were plurilingual, because all Philippine speakers are plurilingual, that doesn't mean that they understood the particulars of the grammar. Like you're not going to be able to say to someone, hey, what's a postfix? They're not going to get it. Okay, why do you change the focus from siya to kaya when you say this or say that? What about the reduplication in the postfix, like pupunta? Why do you reduplicate this for continuance? You're not going to be able to ask them those questions because they don't have codified grammars. And you can show them the codified grammar and say this is what it says in the codified grammar, and they're going to be unfamiliar with it. But AI solves this problem. So let's look at this. In Tagalog, how is the past tense of the mag, pag, postfixed used? Now, I've been like 20 something, 30 something years practically wanting to know the answer to this question instantaneously. Not where I've got to go look it up in a book, take it to the speaker of this language, point it out in the book, and then they say, oh yeah, okay, now I see what you're talking about. I didn't know what you were talking about. Then they read the book, then I read the book. Then I read the book, then they read the book. And then they say, oh God, I never knew that. Okay, so I got tired of that. Oh God, I never knew that. So let's see. So now they're talking about a YouTuber. And I actually subscribe to her channel. And let's see if she's going to be able to say something with competence. And she's good. But when they're going to her, what they're doing is that they're going to come with the relevant information. Then they're trying to say that maybe on her channel the relevant information is covered. But I'm already a subscriber to her channel, and she doesn't cover things to my satisfaction. But let's see what they say. In Tagalog, the past tense for the verb with the prefix mag is formed by adding nag before the root verb. For example, nagluto, to cook, because nagluto, cook. This pattern applies to mag verbs, such as magare, to study, transforming to magare, study. Now, arel is going to be Latin. And you're going to say, well, how can you say it's Latin? Because it's agricultural, which in Latin means also is a form of to study, because you plant. And that's because Indo-European and in this particular language, they're going to come out of Sanskrit, and they're going to be related. So you're going to say, well, that's a cognate. That's just a friendly word. That sounds the same, but it's not. It's the same word coming out of Sanskrit. Okay. I'm trying to make heavy cream here, so buy YouTube. YouTube saves me a lot of money. Okay, so the mag prefix indicates that the action has been completed. Now, what are they going to do with the pag verbs? Okay, see, how does the prefix pag differ from See that? And so they're going down through the verbs. Well, that's interesting. Let's look at that. Mag, serve different functions in Tagalog verb. Nag indicates a complete action going from the present relative to nagsulat, the I spoke, I wrote, and emphasize the action. See, I always said, Eko para sulat ang Tagalog. So sulat is writing. Sinabi is to speak. So no wonder nobody understood me. Okay. And performed by the subject. M is an infix indicating the complete action, but inserted into the root. For example, kumayan. I had no idea. See, I just said kumayan, and so that's the progressive I am eating, but kumayan, and it's kumayan is just to eat. But and I studied all this, but I just can't remember it, and that's the thing. People in this language are not going to know this stuff, so you've got to know it. Okay, so now I have a reminder. Okay, I remember that. But still, what about pag? So you got nag and you got pag. Let's see what it says. The pag prefix in Tagalog is used to form nouns and verbs and generally indicates an action of the verb. And with roots, pag can be used creative verbs that express action, such as asking someone for something or bringing things together. Okay, pag is a class of verbs. Pagara, see, versus magara. Studying. Pag-usap. Oh, usap, talking. Okay. This affix can form an imperative and is critical in conveying actions, nature, and sentence. See? I never knew. Well, I don't mean to say I never knew like I never knew. I mean, I knew because I read the book on it, but that doesn't mean that I knew it because I couldn't articulate it. So let's look. Prefix pag in Tagalog is used to form nouns, particularly gerunds or action nouns, typically transferring nouns into actions of process of verb. Pagkain. Okay, eating. Pagsulatan, writing. And constructing the idea of the action itself rather than the act of performing it, emphasizing the act or result of the verb. So pag changes the focus. So mag, okay. Like, okay, this is why you got to study Latin. In Latin, you have a class of verbs that sounds like the Spanish estudiar, estudiado. Okay, studied. Kind of like that. In English, it would be studied. But that can be a verb that in Latin means estudiatudo, estudiatura. And it can mean that one studied. Estudiatura bibliam, bibliam. That it was studied. It studied. It's the verb itself and the thing. So it's the verb itself and the direct object. It studied, kind of like that, but without the it. It's kind of like without the it, but with the it. It's just, and so that's what this pag is doing. So pag estudiar, pag kain. Okay, now what that means is that what I found here is a linchpin. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a linchpin. So I don't have to use a pronoun now. I can say pag sulat, writing. Pag kain, eating. Pag sinabi, talking. Pag lakot, walking. Pag tulog, sleeping. See? So now I'm going to use pag for everything until somebody says, hey, use something else besides pag. See? And that's how you start. You find a linchpin that you can remember. Because if you can remember pig, you can remember pag. If you can remember pig, you can remember lechen. If you can remember pig and lechen, and you can remember puerco, you can remember pag. Now, mag is going to be tough to remember because the best you can link it with is maggot, which is a negative thought. But pag with pig, especially if you like Canadian bacon, you're going to always be able to say pag kayan. Now, you can say ako pag kayan sa isida. And that is completely grammatically incorrect. And watch, I'm going to show you. I take pag kayan and watch. So what you want to do is you want to start out. Let's get to Google Translate, because now you can translate this in an AI, but AI is going to translate it well. You want something that's going to do what a human being is going to do and give you a partial translation that's going to translate it poorly. We'll try and get this. And well, it has a definite article. Okay, see? So I know. Now, we're going to try and sound this out. And so we're already in Latin.
Ego pisce sedo.
Okay. Sounds like I am eating fish, right? Get it in Tagalog.
Ako pagkain ang isad.
Go to the related language.
Estou comendo peixe.
See that?
Ako pagkain ang isad.
Okay, so what exactly what Proximity AI said pod does, it does do. Now you got a lynchpin verb. Okay, now let's go to another related language.
Estoy comiendo el pescado.
Okay, estoy comiendo pescado. Now, from this, watch this. See that? Now, see? See that? Now, what you want to do is add a temporal adverb. Don't add a past tense. Just use a temporal adverb. You're going to get sophisticated and be able to add an actual adverb and actual add a time, but don't do it right now because any language is too complex for that. Start out, and now that I've found, and maybe it took me 30 years to find out what is the linchpin of this language. The pag particle is the linchpin, and a linchpin means that it's familiar in both languages and I don't have to conjugate. That's what you're looking for. So I found it. Okay. And it translates in associative languages so that you can have understanding. Okay, watch. Now let's see if it's going to be sensitive to order. Watch this. Sa, ga, bai, e. Yeah. See? Come on.
Sa gabi ako pagkain ang isang.
See? Now, watch what I got.
Por la noche como un.
Okay. See what I got? See what I got? Now, I can put a comma here. And by adding the adverb, it changed the tense of pagkain for me. Okay. But basically, I can say sagabai, ako pagkain un isda. Now, pero, use Spanish. Because they'll recognize it. Watch this. Because he's barking. Let's see if it'll get it. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, now watch.
Sa gabi, ako pagkain ang isang pero mañana pagkain bagues. Por la noche como uno pero mañana como arroz.
See that? Now, so what is that? So now we're going to go to a language that may be familiar, that we're addressing this in. At night, I eat once, but tomorrow I eat rice. See, and that's not perfect, but it gets you so close that you can use POG for everything. So now, let's say I'm telling somebody about this language. So what I'm going to tell them is that the first thing you have to do is just plain and simply, and see now they're not going to tell me this on these Tagalog sites. First thing is memorize the root, like kai and eat. Memorize that. To log, sleep. Punta, go. La cog, walk. And then put pog with it. And you don't have to put necessarily a pronoun with it. Use the Spanish rule. You don't necessarily have to use a pronoun, so you don't have to remember I call and see ya. See? And the reason you don't want to remember I call and see ya is because you got Mia, Kia, Kia, and you got these changes in focus. So, you know, you don't necessarily want to remember them in that first year. But you get the fog, and you got echo, use my favorite phrase, echo, pag, punta, sa, punto. See, I was saying echo, punta, sa, punto. But I can use pag and say echo, pag, punta, sa, punto. Ara, pero, sa hapon, echo, pag, tayan, sa, dagat. See? Now, for the first time, I have a complete and thoughtful sentence that isn't perfect, but I just said, I am going to the mountains today. Then later on in the evening, I am going to the sea. See? That's how you do it. That first year, don't get complicated. Because in the first year, it doesn't matter what the language is, you got to be able to talk it. Now you're going to say, yeah, but damn, you've been at this for 30 years. And you would be correct. But here's the problem. It took 30 years for my best friend and the woman who was just so lovely. It took her 30 years to have confidence enough in me that she was willing to exclusively write to me in Cebuano. See, now she's not writing to me in Tagalog. She's writing to me in another language. So still, in Masbateño is her family language. So she's still writing to me two languages removed. So we're not writing directly in Tagalog. See? So I had to understand enough Tagalog to understand Cebuano and to understand when she was talking Masbateño. So it is complicated. And the reason this happens in this language is because people speak 120 dialects in the Philippines. That being the case, they are accustomed to meeting people and not understanding exactly what people are saying in their own country. So if they get into any type of enduring relationship with somebody that is from a different province or something of that sort, both people have to invest in learning the regional language of the other person. That's why even if I grew up in the Philippines, I would still have to invest a similar amount of time to reach the same goal that this friend of mine, and I have reached. And so, That's why when you're listening to these guys that say, "Oh, I'm boots in the underground. I've been in the Philippines for this number of years, blah 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 blah," and then they haven't discovered. And now remember, I'm not in the Philippines, so they're directly in the Philippines, and they can't tell you that the pod particle is the key particle of the language. They can't tell you that because if pog only allows verbal continuation, whereas mog and nog allow not only verbal continuation, but are a present and past state, you don't want to use the present and past state because the present and past state are going to be too complicated within the first year. So they can't tell you to use the pod particle. See what I'm saying? That's why these guys are just absolutely unreliable. Reliability means reliability. Like you go into a classroom, and I had this German teacher, and I always talk about her. And she thought that when I went to her lab to speak to her, that I thought that I would judge her reliability as a German teacher based upon how well her best student did. That's not what you judge somebody on. You can't judge Einstein based upon how well physicists understand him. If you read any of the great ones like Newton, Galileo, any of these great guys, you cannot judge them based upon what someone of similar intellect understands about what they said. If you're judging them based on that, you're missing the point. If you are a great thinker or a great teacher, then generally any sane person is going to understand what your theory, what your statement, any sane person is going to understand it. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, but anybody can dumb it down for the audience. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm telling you is that Einstein could explain his theory in German, he could explain it in English, and he could explain it to the common man. So you're saying, well, what do you mean he could explain it to the common man? Remember this. At some point, Albert Einstein stayed in his car, and he sent his driver into a lecture hall to give the lecture. And when his driver went in to give the lecture, the people in the lecture hall could not distinguish whether the driver was Einstein or Einstein was the driver. See, that's what all of this stuff, Filipino expats, boots on the ground, all of this stuff, if you can't explain the pod particle, and you've been in the Philippines 9 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, and you can't explain the pod particle, the pod prefix, as the linchpin of a language, then no matter what you say to me after, it's unimportant. You ask me, you speak Spanish or another language, you ask me, what is the linchpin of English? And I can't tell you that Ghana is the linchpin of English. Well, you can't rely on me. What's the linchpin of Spanish? Vamos. With vamos, you can say everything. Vamos dormir. Vamos pensar. Vamos soltar. vamos parar, vamos manejar. With vamos, you can say everything in French, Latin, Portuguese, Romanian, everything that you need to say in the first year, you can say it in those languages just by using the Spanish vowels. You can use it in Italian. Now, Italian, they have like volare, volare. They have want. They have want, which is with the English word volition. But you land in Rome. You want a taxi. You can say vamos taxi en máquina, and they know exactly what you want. You want a taxi. You want to go in a taxi, which is a car. They're gonna understand it. That's what you want. You don't want to be taking out books, translators, this, that, other. You want to be able to get to this stuff instantaneously and safely without putting life and limb on the line, carrying around a phrase book, or carrying around your cell phone translating. You know, some guy was teaching me Spanish, and he wasn't very good at it. But one thing that he did know, now he didn't know that I knew Portuguese, but one thing that he did know, and one thing that I'll never forget, is he didn't know any of the tenses in Spanish. None of them. So, but one thing he was smart enough to say was don't conjugate anything. Don't worry about the past, the present, the future. Just say one verb. Now, was he sophisticated enough to say this?
Sa gabi, ako pagkain ng isang pero manyanya pagkain bages.
Was he, and let's put this in Spanish so we can see what we're saying. And hopefully we got some power here. Was he sophisticated to know this, to say that, hey, if you add a adverb of time to the verb, that changes the tense automatically without having to have to change the tense? So, I mean, no.
Por la noche como uno pero mañana como arroz.
He couldn't say that I don't have to worry about changing coma. See? He didn't have to say that. Now, we're gonna take out the pronoun and watch and see what taking out the pronoun does. Nothing in Spanish. Absolutely nothing. Doesn't change anything. So why are you here? Let's put in this and show you why. See that? See ya? And let's say that I make an error and I say Nia. See that? Doesn't change it. Doesn't change it. Let's say I make another error. See, now I know that I just changed the focus, all with your errors. I know that that's an error. Doesn't change it, doesn't change it, doesn't change it. Now, when do I have to worry about a change? Watch. Watch this. I don't have any. When do I have to worry about a change? And that's if I got some power here. Okay, this little connection that I got to the internet, I pay the landlord for the internet. But he has some but somebody else pays him for the internet too. So he's been enterprising. He doesn't use the internet. It was before his time. So what he's done now is he shared his password with every damn body in the whole damn barrio. So now my connection has slowed. So he's pretty happy. He's probably getting 4, 5, 6, 700 more pesos a month. But basically I'm getting screwed. So I'm gonna have to change to the other person's, to another neighbor's internet connection next month and dump his. But why can't I just get my own internet connection? Well, I can, except for it's going to cost a lot more. And the quality is going to be worse. That is, if I get a cell phone chip internet service. It's gonna really be bad. I'm not gonna get good bandwidth. And I'm gonna be in the same situation that I'm in now. And as a result, you see the guy and he's climbing the pole putting in internet. He said, "Hey man, give me some internet." And the first thing that he's gonna ask you for is, "Hey, give me your matricula. Give me your papers." You don't got papers, you don't get anything. So, you know, you don't got papers, you can't work in Mexico. You don't got papers, you can't sign up for electricity. You don't got papers, you can't sign up for the internet. You don't got papers, you can't get a driver's license. So maybe you can reside in the country, which basically means that you're a perpetual tourist until somehow you get residency. So other than that, you're non-Mexican, you're a perpetual tourist. So what that means is that you can spend money in Mexico, but only in certain transactions. So there's transactions for the Mexican nationals, then there's transactions for the tourists. Well, so somebody in the Philippines, they're not telling you that the same thing exists. And the ACLU in the United States isn't telling you that the same restrictions that Trump and company want to expose foreign nationals to are the everyday restrictions that foreign nationals are exposed to in Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, Colombia, Philippines. See, that's why you gotta know these languages for yourself. And if you don't know, don't go. Because you can't assume that what you see some lawyer say on TV out of New York City, that means that the reverse is true in Mexico. Oh, the police are harassing them and asking them for their papers. And so some Mexican or you assume that in Mexico nobody's asking for anyone's papers. Well, no, that's not true. Mexican immigration is one of the roughest immigrations in the world. They will rattle your cage. They'll put the screws to you. You know, they don't play around. Philippine immigration, they're not playing with you. Brazilian immigration, they're not playing with you. French immigration, they're not playing with you. British immigration, they're not playing with you. German immigration, they're not playing with you. This assumption that the only ball busters who are with immigrant police are the Americans is just completely wrong. The Canadians, their immigration service, they're not playing with you. You enter Canada when they don't want you to enter and under conditions or a status under which they don't want you to enter, they're gonna be some real ball busters. I mean, it's just the way it is. This is plain and simply the way it is. So, there's the pod particle. Finally, I found it. Know before you go.